I'd like to introduce Chuck Groom and Gaurav Oberoi from BillMonk. BillMonk is a site to record lending among friends. You can go out to dinner and write down that I paid and you guys owe me $10, and then next week my friend can pay for the tickets to the movies and we're even, and BillMonk will keep track of that. It's a very good application. With that, I'd like to hand it over to them. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Matt. So my name's Gaurav.
Hi, I'm Chuck.
And we're the founders of BillMonk. We're actually here today because Matt is a user of our site, and I know some more of you in the audience are too. And so Matt, one day, he wrote into us saying, oh, this would be a great idea, what do you guys think? And we went back and forth after a while, and he suddenly took his cloak off and was like, haha, I work at Google. And I like your service, and it would be cool if you guys could come and talk a little bit about it. And so as you guys know, as you guys well know, building web apps that work for people, you've got to find something, you've got to find a problem that people really have, and then execute it in a way that makes sense. And with BillMonk, I think that is our key power. We found a very real-world problem, and we've created a site that our users tell us is intuitive. As Matt said, buttons are where they should be, and it all just kind of makes sense. And we're going to go through some of the design decisions that we made to get here. And some of the seemingly trivial things on the site actually have a fair amount of thought that went into it. And I think it makes a big difference as to adoption and how people actually use it. So before I continue, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background about Chuck and I. This is our first company. We launched in mid-January. Both of us used to work at Amazon. We quit last fall. I'll let Chuck tell you a little bit about what he did there.
Great. So Gaurav and I both came from a technical background within Amazon. I was working on the item metadata team, which tries to infer knowledge about the world of things just based upon pools of item data. For example, to learn that bicycles have wheels. Very cool stuff. I also worked before that within Amazon on fraud prevention, which has actually turned out to be really helpful with designing a site like BillMonk. And then before that, with Larry here and a few other people who are now at Google, worked at a company which worked on mobile applications, for example, on cell phones and PDAs, which the cell phone angles also played out really well for BillMonk.
Yeah, I used to work on a team there called the Browse team, and our job was to make sure that all products at Amazon get categorized in the right way. And a large part of the problem there was evaluating lots and lots of queries on all products at Amazon very quickly and in real time. So it was a problem largely related to scaling. Anyways, so going on, what we're going to talk about, we're going to describe the problem that we solved, give you a bit of an overview, go through the solution, a few slides of BillMonk just to keep it simple, and then really the meat of the conversation is where we'll go through various design decisions, talk about observations and how that affected our decisions in building the site. We'll tell you a little bit about the business of BillMonk, and we think that's interesting just because we come from a geek background and we're bootstrapping this business. There's a lot of interesting things we've learned in terms of where you put your efforts and what you get out of that. And then we'll share some of the lessons learned in general. So I'm going to hand it over to Chuck.
Great, thanks. So we are solving the problem of friends borrowing money, borrowing stuff. This has been acknowledged by people for a long time to be a big contentious issue. Here we have a nice Shakespeare quote. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend. You lose your cash and you lose your friends. It's really hard. It's a huge problem that people have in daily life, is not losing their cash, not losing their friends, but still maintaining normal social relationships with people. Friends borrow and lend money and stuff to each other all the time. It's part of friendship. It's part of what you do. But we're people. We forget. And if we try to actually remind the other person, it's kind of awkward and feelings can get easily hurt. This happens all the time. Let's just talk about splitting bills. You split bills all the time. Roommates, rent, utilities, etc. People go on vacation together. We've all been in the restaurant where you have like 8 people out for dinner and you get that giant bill and you have to haggle over how to split it up, and then remembering that. Big pain. One person just wants to pay and forget it. And so on. There's so many cases where bills happen. Stuff. You lend a friend a book, but you kind of forget, who did I lend it to? You want to keep track. You want to look at what sort of video games a friend might have to borrow, and maybe you might want to find out what they're willing to borrow, what they're not willing to borrow. These are all things that computers can be very good at helping people with. So we decided to write a web application called BillMonk to solve this. It does 3 things. It helps you split up your bills. It helps you borrow and lend stuff, and it just keeps track of everything in one place. We also added a cell phone interface to it so that you can use the site while you're on the go. So you have the website, and then you have your cell phone. Probably the most important page on the whole BillMonk site is the Friends page. The thing to notice here is we try to make it as actionable as possible. We give you the summary, hey, you actually need to collect $18.75 in 2 books. It's right there, it's one place telling you all the actions you need to take with all of your friends, one stop, you have it all. For example, you can look at Bob. Bob owes you 2 books, you owe Bob $30.50. Now suppose you're wondering, well, why do I owe Bob $30.50 and what are the 2 books? We make it really easy to click on Bob and get some drill down details. So here you can see the transactions that led up to that amount, back and forth. It's just one summary. So the ski trip, you owe Bob some money, Bob owes you some money for pizza, you owe Bob some money for the cable bill. That's why it works out to being $30.50. Library, you can find it's Cat's Cradle, Sun Also Rises, are the books that Bob owes you. One of the things to notice is we have this idea of an open transaction. What's that? We're going to get into that in a little bit, but that's really, there could be a huge history of things with Bob. There's only a few things that are sort of explaining the current amount owed with Bob. So we also help you keep track of that. Really, one of the things we spent a lot of time on is making the interface as simple as possible. The hardest screen and the one that users seem to like the best is just entering a bill, splitting a bill. It's as easy as starting with the basic details. How much money was it? What's the basic description? And you start adding who paid. It could be one person, it could be many people, and who participated. In this case, you paid 75 bucks for dinner. There were 4 people. By default, we assume it was an even split, so we do the math for you. But, you know, in some cases where a friend ate a little bit less, for example, Claire didn't have the soup, you can make that friend not owe quite as much. All there, easy interface, easy to go back and edit. We also added the ability to record events when you're on the go. What this is really useful for is if you're at a dinner, you want to remember how much money you spent, you know, roughly how many people were there. You don't want to enter all the details. You want to just pay with your credit card, make sure you get paid back sometime, and go on having a fun night. It's about remembering right then, filling in the details later. The messages can be as simple as, for example, 75 space 4 space CHISO, which means I paid $75 for 4 people for CHISO. Your messages can be more complex. You can enter more details if you like. But really, that's the basic that you have to do. Try to keep it really simple so users can do it quickly, remember their money, and then get on with their lives. If you guys want, we can talk about more details about this after the talk. I'd be happy to talk more about the SMS angle. The library itself, it's what you'd expect out of a library. It's a collection of everything in the world that you can see. It's the collection of your stuff, the things that you own, the stuff that your friends have so you can browse what your friends own, and then the status. The book, for example, Bob's borrowing my artificial intelligence book, and I'm borrowing from Claire a leather jacket. It's a place where you can sort of look and browse the stuff that is your stuff and your friends' stuff. It's very easy to add to the library. We try to keep, again, like the shared bill interface, we try to keep that very simple. It's a multi-step process. What kind of thing is it? Tell us how you want to enter it. We offer 2 choices today. You can enter it through Amazon Web Services. We tied into that. So you can suck up all the data from Amazon using simple product search. Or you can enter it yourself. And we actually allow you to do semi-structured item data in a very easy field. You can just type stuff in. Once you have the item, you show all the full details. And we allow you to lend it out to a friend. You can even sell to a friend, which is really useful if, you know, a friend's been borrowing a book for a couple of months. You're like, you can just have a couple of bucks. And we can even look up what the fair price is on Amazon if you care. Or you can just gift it to them. But it's really trying to manage the real-world case of you've lent it out to a friend, you want to track that you've done that. Maybe you want to actually sell it to them too, or just get it over to them. But at least you know where your items are and you've taken action with it. You've not let it just slip out of your brain. So I'm going to hand it over to Gaurav here to talk about, now we've gone through a really fast run through the site, there were a lot of really small decisions we had to make, some really big decisions we had to make, and a lot of philosophy that really went into this. And the site could have turned out very differently than it is today.
Thanks, John. So, one of the big questions we had is, what really is the problem we're solving? And there are a lot of solutions out there today that are trying to deal with the problem of friends splitting bills and owing each other money. And a lot of them take the shape of, I have a cell phone and I can beam you some cash right now by sending a text message and whatnot. And while these solutions target one end of the problem, the real issue is tracking what happens. So when I owe my friend cash, all I really care about is knowing that it's happened. I also don't want to forget to repay him down the road because that can be embarrassing. And then there's the bill splitting math that you have to deal with. After a few beers, you certainly don't want to figure out exactly who owes who how much. You want to move on and have a good time. So these are the pain points that we're trying to solve, not immediate payment. And kind of the way we did that is we wanted to make it extremely easy to record a bill. So we did put the cell phone component for on the go and simplify the UI as much as possible. We wanted to make it really clear that there are actionable summaries. The user should know what they need to do to even out with their friend, as opposed to trying to figure out, well, how are we going to settle up this bill over time? And then let BillMonk do the reminding. So the awkwardness is turning to someone and saying, hey, you still owe me 30 bucks from that cab the other day. We made a very conscious decision on the site. When you send a reminder to someone, you can actually put custom text in there, just because we don't want people writing nasty messages and leaving a bad flavor. And I think these are some of the little things that lead to people sticking around on the site. Which kind of leads to another question we had is, are these debts binding? So if I go to BillMonk and I record a debt, does that mean I owe you money? And is it kind of, Tony Soprano is going to turn up at your door and be like, give me the cash? And it was really important for us when going with something somewhat sensitive, like tracking money with your friends, to convey this sense of friendliness and to convey that these are informal debts, and really this is based on trust, just like it is in the real world. Some of the things that we didn't realize how important they are, especially coming from a technical background, branding was really important. Having this serene, just monk gives you this, oh, he's a fair guy and he'll take care of it, as opposed to calling our site loanshark.com or where's my money at, And then messaging. Every time we talk to people, we're not like, use this to get paid back. The way we describe it is, use this to be fair, be a good citizen, keep on top of your finances, get the clutter out of your mind. And then again, the nasty reminders is something we were careful about. Another question we had is, well, when you split bills, who are you doing it with? Is it usually a fixed group of people, like, oh, I split bills just with my roommates, or just with my office buddies when we go to lunch? And it would have been much easier for us to model the system where you do kind of go online and then define, here are the people I'll be splitting bills with, and then go and start entering bills. But really, that's not how it is, and I wanted to illustrate that. So you split rent with a few guys. One of your roommates goes on a road trip with 3 of his other friends, and he splits gas with them, and then one of them, splits a gift for mom with his brother. And really, as you see, there's this network of people, and you're splitting bills with everyone. Now, being the geeks that we are, we wanted to convince ourselves that this made sense. So after a while, we graphed a subset of the users on BillMonk. In the graph here, all the nodes are users. The size of the node is based on the recent activity by that given user. And the edges, if there's an edge between 2 nodes, it's because they've split a bill together. And as you can notice, there are lots of tight clusters, but then sometimes they zip far across and connect with other groups, or they overlap in a strong way. In order to make this happen, we really didn't want artificial groups, and we didn't want this process where you come in and say, oh, well, Joe's my friend, and Mark's my friend, and Alice is my friend, and now I'm going to go enter a bill. In fact, instead, as you enter a bill, if someone is not in the system, you just use their email address. And at that moment, we'll create an account for that user, send them an email saying, welcome to BillMonk, which is the last email they'll ever get from us, unless they want to continue using it. But it all becomes very natural. By the way, a side benefit of this is over half of our users were actually invited by other users, which makes sense. You have a financial incentive to add people to BillMonk. Another question was, how do we split bills? Now, in real world, a lot of people, you go to a restaurant, you'll just hand the bill around and say, why don't you figure out what you owe and just throw some money into the pile, and we'll figure it out at the end. But there are a few things we observed about this process. A, no one likes to do the math. It's kind of a pain, and people are generally bad at it. And the last person who gets it gets the bill ends up getting gypped and has a few more dollars paid off. So this is a case where we said, we'll do the math for you. We'll set up some good defaults on how this works, but we'll make sure that if there are bits left over, they get prorated across everyone. A few simple decisions like that, I think, go a long way.
Now, this did introduce one very tiny problem, which is if we're dividing the bill evenly for you, sometimes pennies don't quite get allocated evenly because we're not going to split pennies, which is the question of who gets stuck with the penny. And that's where, you talk to us. For example, Nora here is one of our alpha testers. You're going to get the penny knocked off your bill.
Yeah, so, but another situation where we looked at what people are doing, and in this case, we actually tried to improve it. a little bit. So when people pay their bills off, they're very bill-centric. They're like, oh, I owe you for rent, I owe you for gas, and I owe you for dinner. But at the end of the day, all that really matters is that I owe you some amount of money. So if I turn around to Chuck and I give him a $100 bill, does that cover a little bit of last month's rent, or does it cover groceries? Or so if we let people be bill-centric, we would put them into this workflow tunnel of allocating payments to actual bills. This was a case where we actually turned to our users and said, this is not a good idea. We think it's better off if you don't pay individual bills off, but you pay your friends off. So the decision we made on the website is when a balance between you and a friend hits 0, all bills prior to that, we'll hide them for you, and we'll call them closed. Bills after that point are considered open. We actually have a nice chart on the website that kind of illustrates this.
Yeah, so the chart's interesting. So like Gaurav was saying, what we call bills closed is when the running balance for you and your friends hits 0. Every bill up to that point in history is closed, or when you cross 0. And that's a neat way of sort of thinking about it. And we started drawing out lots of graphs as we're going through our design. We're like, you know what? These are actually really useful graphs in their own right. They show people where the history of their financial history with their friend in recent times. We put it up on the site, and the weird thing is our users love it. They say, wow, I see trends in how I work with my friends that I never noticed before. They pay lots of small things, then I pay them back a big thing. Or we always go back and forth, back and forth. It was kind of cool. It doesn't, it's just one of those side things we did, and users just love it. And also, it's kind of neat from a geek perspective, because the graphs generate client side, which is fun.
Using lots of little divs, actually. So we're drawing graphs using many, many divs. Anyways. Another question people had, this was probably the most contentious point on the site, is if someone enters a bill, I want to go and approve every single bill that happens. And what we did was Chuck and I were talking about how we've split bills in the past and how other people do it. And there are kind of two big models. There's either the super accountant who lives with you, and he's like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of everything, I'll do all the bills. And then there's the more kind of democratic, distributed system where there's a note on the refrigerator door and everyone goes and adds their little bit and they take care of it. We wanted to accommodate both. And adding an approval system makes that really hard. The other is we wanted to avoid the situation where I enter a bill and now I'm waiting for your approval, but you don't really use BillMonk or you don't like to or you're lazy. And in that case, I'm getting hindered. So there are unapproved balances and approved ones. If someone's not using the system, you're just going to start looking at unapproved balances overall. This was a case, again, where we went back and forth with our users and said, if we do go down this route, here are some of the pains that you'll have. We stuck with the decision of, instead of approval, we have an audit log so you can track everything that's been changed on a bill, as well as a notification that says, hey, this has been changed, we just want to let you know. Right now, our notifications are a bit noisy, so we're going to fix that soon. But that's kind of the decision we took there. Another question a lot of people ask that we've said we've decided against it is, I don't really want to add my friend to the system with an email address. I just want to give you an arbitrary string that represents my friend. I just want to say Joe owes me this money. And the place where we put our foot down here is if there's information about you somewhere online, and someone's going to use that in the real world to turn around and say, hey, buddy, you owe me this, or can we settle up, whatnot, you have a right to have access to it. We've also found a lot of times with our users, someone will add them to the system, they won't really want to use BillMonk, they don't see a need, but down the road, they'll suddenly log back in and say, oh, I understand what's going on, and suddenly start using it. So, but at the end of the day, really, if there's information about you, you should have access to it. So the way we did this is email is identity, and the nice thing about that is you don't end up with multiple identities on BillMonk representing the same real-world user. It also makes it extremely easy to add people outside the network very quickly. I'll let Chuck take over some of the business lessons.
Right. So as Gaurav mentioned, we're geeks by training and occupation. And all of a sudden we are in the position of not just creating a new website, which we could do as geeks, but also trying to think of it as a business. So I really hope this section is useful for all of you, just understanding what goes into these small bootstrap little businesses and what have we had to deal with. The first question everyone asks us as far as building a company is, where's the money in this? Why are you doing this? It's not just simple generosity as much as I'd like it to be. I should point out BillMonk is free to use today. So why are we doing this? Well, we think that this actually could be huge. If you think about it, there's an economy of informal debts between friends. People are always lending money back and forth, and it's largely been invisible in terms of normal economic indicators. How big is this economy? Hard to say. Like I said, it's been invisible. We can take some back of the envelope guesses though. In the United States alone, there's 20 million roommates, okay? Assume that each of them is paying around $400 a month in shared bills, like rent and utilities. That alone is $100 billion for roommates in the United States. Just one back of the envelope estimate. This could be a humongous market. Our goal is to be tracking a significant chunk of this informal economy through BillMonk. What do we do then? People want to settle up online sometimes. You say, okay, fine. We had a big dinner together, went up to the movies, bought some tickets. Now we're in the opposite end of the country, I'll pay you back online. We want to offer that feature on BillMonk and then take a tiny cut of that transaction if possible. Another model too is some people want very powerful users for very specific narrow use cases. We will offer those features and charge a tiny premium yearly or monthly amount for access to those features. As far as growth so far, we've only been alive for 5 months. We already have seen 8,000 users. And as Gaurav mentioned, over half of those were from referrals. And we have over 30 currencies being used actively within our system. We're very big across the entire world. All this was done with just really minimal marketing. Mostly it was bloggers writing about us. To date have been the biggest sources of people learning about BillMonk, which is great.
People referring their friends.
Yeah, people referring their friends. And it's just been the two of us. And so we're like, wow, this is really cool. So maybe we can turn out the marketing heat and get things going more. In the future, we want BillMonk to grow and grow, as I said, to manage all of the informal debts that people have in the world. But even more broadly, just to be the hub where people come to, the single hub on the internet to manage your expenses. Do personal expenses through BillMonk. Do your bill pay. Integrate with online banks. But still stay true to this idea that it's not just about you being set off separate from the rest of the world. It's about you existing within the social network with all of your friends and your money flowing back and forth with them too. For those who are...
I'd just like to add one thing to that statement.
Sure.
There's, so, you know, in the last few years, there's so many more people online today. Every college student has a laptop, and this whole generation, every time they have a problem, they turn to the web to look for a solution. There isn't a place right now which offers you a one-stop shop for dealing with your finances, and we think there is a big opportunity.
Great. Being a small business without a whole lot of cash, we of course went with open source software. And for those who are curious, our stack includes Ruby on Rails, running out of FastCGI and Apache. We're based on Linux, Debian distro, Postgres database, Pound software load balancer, Subversion bug tracking system, Subversion repository system, Track as our bug and feature tracking system, and then we use for internal documentation MediaWiki, just to give you guys a flavor of what we're using. We'd like to move a little more into just the general lessons learned in this transition from being geeks to entrepreneurs. Marketing is hugely important. Marketing takes a lot of time. When I was, way back in the day working in my little company and marketers were over there, I sort of made fun of them like, ha ha ha, marketing does nothing. Marketing does a whole lot. They are forging connections, they're getting people to come use your service, and they're really helping you establish what it is that you really should be doing, very narrowly focusing you. We found out how important it was to work with the press. Like I was saying earlier, press is how we get a huge chunk of our users. And press can hurt you, press can help you a lot. Really, you have to find relationships with the people doing journalists. Most journalists love to meet people who are doing stuff out in the trenches. It's been really great for us to forge these connections and talk with these people and get out there. And bloggers are journalists. Bloggers matter a lot. Work with bloggers. Bloggers are wonderful. And of course, be transparent. As you're trying to work on your company's message, as you're trying to work on your features, if you have internal problems, let everyone know where you're coming from. You avoid a lot of pain and you really get a lot of user loyalty out of it. As far as bootstrapping us as a company, it's really important for us to be frugal. Not just because we don't have much cash to work with, but also because the process of trying to work with as little money as possible really forced us to cut to the bare minimum in terms of feature set, cut to the bare minimum in terms of hardware, and really focus on what are we truly passionate about, what can we execute on, and it gave us a sense, I think, of deeper ownership of the problem that we're in. As far as how that manifested, it was in personal life. We've sort of, ever since college, having to hold off on a lot of big expenses. Not buying a house, not buying a fancy car. We've really been trying to keep our daily life simple so we don't have many needs so that we can fund activities like having a company. In terms of the business, we don't have an office. We don't have fancy chairs. I won't tell you about our servers. The other really important lesson for anyone starting a business, though, is do not do it alone. It's absolutely, I think, been vital that Gaurav and I have been working together. Why? You need someone to be accountable to. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't get out of bed quite as early. I probably wouldn't work quite as late. You need someone to bounce ideas off of. Good ideas don't happen just working on your own. You really need someone to say, is this stupid? And they could say, or someone can say, well, maybe if you modified it, then it becomes genius. And that's great. And just motivation. The other thing about having your own company is perfection ceases to be an option. You have to make a whole lot of decisions incredibly fast. So you're going to have to choose between options without full knowledge sometimes. So you're shooting from the hip a great deal. Here's my advice, though. If you're shooting from the hip all the time, make sure your aim is getting a little bit better over time. So it's fine. You have to trust yourself to do these fast decisions. But take a step back every so often and ask, am I actually getting better at making these snap decisions? If so, what can I do to improve it? In terms of actual process, we have found for ourselves that from day to day, one of the most important things we do is have a little short meeting in the morning where we say, all right, what did you do yesterday? What am I doing today? And to form a list of to-dos. Just once a day, then we can go off and work on our own. But the sort of daily touching base has been just hugely useful in exposing problems, showing up trends, and really keeping ourselves motivated. If an issue or an idea comes up, you have to track it. Especially ideas. You may not think of just how many good ideas you sort of want to do, and you sort of lose, forget. So we track everything in our software tracking system. Infrastructure. Document it. Please document all of your infrastructure stuff. How you set up your machines, how your repository works, perhaps how a core chunk of code works. We've lost a lot of time sometimes because we said, yeah, I'll remember that, and we don't. So we found we have to document as we go, and it saves us a lot of time in the long run. In terms of our technical process, we do write design docs. We're a small company, so they're not very huge, but a couple of pages. What they're really most helpful for, as you guys probably know with writing design docs, is your own process. Being forced to write about what you're about to do really makes you think about it more critically. And then having to show it to somebody else makes you really think a lot more about its potential holes and scaling issues. We're fanatics about monitoring our systems. We wrote a lot of our own monitoring software and tracking metrics for success. Both business metrics, as in is the company doing well or not in these particular areas, as well as software metrics. How well is the service performing? What's its throughput? How well would it scale? How many more boxes do we need? These things you really should have from day one. And unit tests, where appropriate. I don't think it's reasonable to expect engineers to write unit tests for everything. Oftentimes that won't work well. But unit tests for our core infrastructure pieces, for our core data model pieces, absolutely necessary. It saves us a lot of time and it really gives us peace of mind. In terms of our users, you live or die by your users. How do we act on that? We try to make it really easy for our users to reach us. We make it very easy for them to contact us, and then we try to respond quickly. We try to honor it. They took their time to tell us to give us a suggestion or to report a bug. We're going to do our best to get back to them as soon as possible. And we try to set up for ourselves a 12-hour SLA on that. Now, we're going to miss that tomorrow because we're going to be on the road, but we might find some wireless along the way and still meet our SLA. We had to write some tools so we could track contacts and issues. I should take a step back and point out that a large number of these practices we picked up at Amazon. We think Amazon does a fantastic job doing customer care, and we really strive to meet that level of customer care. They have a really good internal tracking tool. We tried ourselves to write our own really good tracking tool. So if someone writes a comment in, we know what else they've written in the past, have we responded yet, who responded, how long did it take us to respond, can we follow through, link that contact back to a bug in our database. When the bug is closed, can we tell the user that, hey, we solved your problem? That's what we aspire to do. Another thing with users, if a lot of users are asking for something, maybe you should change course. That's where the library came from. At first we're like, BillMonk is about money, and users are like, what about my stuff? I'm borrowing and lending stuff with the same people. We're like, okay, good point, we'll do it. That's where the library came from, because a lot of our users had this very real use case that we were not meeting, and we could easily meet. Admit mistakes. This is hard to do, but people actually really appreciate it. Because when you screw up, people are very forgiving if you say, I screwed up and I'm very sorry, and here's how I screwed up. And you can actually be fairly technical sometimes. We find the users give them the summary view, but sometimes if it helps, give a little bit more detail. Users actually love it because they're treating them like a peer, and you're not talking down to them. And we found that this actually gets a lot of loyalty from our customers. And oftentimes we have a case where a customer reports a small bug, very terse email. We respond with a very detailed summary like, wow, I love you guys. And then they start giving us tons of great suggestions in great florid prose, and it's wonderful. We love it. So that, I think, concludes what we're doing with the presentation. We're actually going to open this up for some Q&A now. So please, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask about anything, about the business, about anything within the slide, where we're going in the future. Perhaps even just the experience of what it was like being starting up our own company, quitting Amazon. Quitting your own job is a hard thing to do.
So, or feature requests.
Yeah, or feature requests.
So I have a quick question. If you want it to be a platform for all payments online, are you going to try and develop an ecosystem of other little services that do little parts of it that you can't take on yourself? Is there a web API coming or something?
Great question.
Yeah, there's so we're definitely working on some web services, not just for tying in, not just for having other third-party payment systems interface with us, but also for providing more and more user interfaces. People write to us and they say, I want to use, I want to have a Java app for my phone to be able to do payments. So from that end, yes, we're working on web services. As far as providing a generic system for tracking with all debts online, we haven't really thought about it to that level, but that could be interesting.
Also, if I can talk about web services, one other aspect is it's our philosophy that your data on BillMonk is your data. So we'll also strive to find ways, while still protecting your privacy, of course, allowing you to suck that data down to your system. We do it as being absolutely necessary.
You can do that today, download an Excel spreadsheet and so on. But
we'd like to make it a web service.
Yeah,
what rate are your users growing?
We get, I don't know, what's our current growth rate?
It really varies day by day. That's a good day. A good day is 1% per day. So really, it's more about 3% a week is normal, 4% a week.
Yeah.
And the problem is also, the real problem is hard to answer is because there's a baseline growth rate, which is if you left users alone, but there's always new blogs writing about us and also new press articles coming out, and you see this causing spikes. It's very hard to figure out, actually, we've been around short enough time, it's very hard to figure out what's the baseline exponential on that, but it does look like an exponent, for which we're very, very happy, and hope that it still maintains to be an exponent.
A big part of growth is retention. How do you find your retention?
That's the really good part, actually. Our users are very sticky. So we'll find people come in, they'll refer their friends, and a very large part of our user base is extremely active.
A very common story, actually, is that someone refers their friends. The person does not sign on for a week or two, and they actually sign on and become a very active user. So the site appears to be very sticky once you actually land on it and learn about the problem and start playing with it a tiny bit.
What was the timeline like between when you first conceived your idea and between like when you guys first went live?
Great question. We started coding in October.
Yeah.
We launched in January. And then we sort of doing a lot of development since then. But really, that was the core timeline of development.
So have you considered advertising at all to supplement income or the servicing?
Yeah.
Great. We have considered advertising. Now, the thing about advertising on a site like BillMonk is, are you guys familiar with the hunter versus the browser on the web? Let me introduce this theory to you, which is, when people are on the web, they're usually doing one of two things. They're either very task-oriented, they want to solve a problem, you should get out of their way and let them solve their task, or they're sort of looking around for things and idly going around and clicking on links. Usually, most advertising is going after the browser, the person who's willing to be led astray to do something. A lot of advertising, unless it's highly contextual, will not fit into the worldview, so in the tunnel, try to solve the task. A lot of BillMonk, especially with the BillMonk Money feature, is about somebody who say, like, get out of my way, I'm trying to enter a bill with a friend of mine. We could put advertising links there, but nobody would probably click on those links. But we add the library, which is a lot more about people browsing to see what their friends have. So that is a place to talk about doing advertising. As well as after doing and entering the bill, you can also put advertising there at that point. So we're still thinking about advertising. If you think about what BillMonk's sitting on, we're sitting on some amazing data for doing very targeted advertising if we want to go down that route. Because we know for some people, users can optionally tell us their gender, their zip code, and their age. If they want to, they don't have to. But a lot of our users do, which is great because it tells us who they are. But if you think about it, we know what you're buying, how many people you're buying it with. We can figure out roughly where you are. And all this other wealth of information means that we can provide incredibly specific ads if we wanted to go down that route. We probably have to build part of our own engine to do so. But it has to be thought about as being very exciting and interesting.
It's a database of past intentions.
I'm just kind of curious of like who did your graphics for website and stuff. Did you have to like kind of outsource that a little bit, or one of you guys did the photo?
Chuck is a UI wizard, so he's done almost everything on the site. The icons, the colors, that was all Chuck. Our logo, we had a friend who is a works as a UI person full-time for another big company, and he did a little bit of freelance work for us and drew up the BillMonk logo.
But yeah, it really was just sitting around for an evening, drinking some coffee and beer, and just doing lots of doodles until we find one that we liked. We've been pretty lightweight with trying to hire someone else to do the design for us, partly because we need to be incredibly flexible and change stuff around so much that the traditional thought process of working with the designer, oftentimes they hand you a fairly static package, and that just wouldn't work for us. But we couldn't afford to really hire someone else to be a designer aside from the two of us.
Any other questions?
So why'd you quit your job and start this?
That's a fantastic question. I want to start off by saying, it really is hard to quit your job. Yeah, but most people, like, I found I had, like, really an emotional attachment to the fact of having a job. And I was pretty happy at Amazon, you know. Making some good money, some pretty cool problems. Why quit? Gaurav and I were friends, and we just drink beer together a lot. Like, we were thinking one night, we sort of keep chatting about, wouldn't it be cool to have your own company? Wouldn't you kind of need to do all this stuff? And so sort of the idea started that way. Until one day, it was just, I went for a trip, actually. I took about a month off from work. Went on a trip, was like, wow, I should start my own company. Darn it, this is the time. And I really don't know why it would set me off, but I decided to want to start a company before I even knew I wanted to do BillMonk. It was just something I've always thought about doing. But it took that sort of getting away from work and really getting a lot of space to really make that decision. And it really is an emotional, strong, hard decision. We were pretty lucky, I should say, in that we're really good places in our lives to quit our jobs. We don't have families, and we don't have mortgages. I actually know some entrepreneurs who have quit their jobs with families and mortgages, and my hat's off to them. I mean, that's a huge step. That's just amazing. For us, it was a lot easier because we were in a great place to take this risk on, because we don't lose anything by doing so.
It's also a lot of fun. I mean, we have an idea that we really believe in. We want to work on it. We get total technical freedom. We're learning a lot of things along the way. And like Chuck said, we're probably not going to have this chance later on in life. Right now, the risks are low. We don't have much to lose in terms of money or reputation, so let's go do it.
How much research have you done about your users' desire to pay, how much they'll pay, and have you hinted that day may come? I think the idea is cool. I'm just personally a little skeptical, or maybe more than a little skeptical, that this will still be a viable business when you have to charge them, and especially if you're not doing advertising to make money now.
That's a question. I just want to repeat the question. So the question is, how have we done our research to figure out if our users, A, are willing to pay, and B, how much they're willing to pay? And there was skepticism expressed, which is great to express, that people might not be willing to pay at all.
Right, so in the ideal world, the way that we want to monetize the system is to keep the site actually completely free, except for settling up online. And then to charge something competitive to what's out in the market today, such as what PayPal charges, in order to do these person-to-person transfers. So what we'll find at that point is a lot of users won't pay each other online. They'll just write each other checks, or they might do something else. But if we can make it easy enough, and we keep the prices competitive to what else is out there, you save in terms of the hassle of tracking what's going on, as well as going to the bank and cashing in your check. What we've learned in the months that we've been out with the service is there's clearly a value proposition to the customer that they get, and people come and use the system and they get it and they spread the word. The kind of charge that every single customer will be looking at won't be very high, as well as there won't be this big upfront cost if we're able to charge a small amount per transaction, so it's not as daunting. Unfortunately, we've been looking at various payment options out there, including PayPal, and no one's really designed something that's very friendly towards person-to-person transactions. And so this is something that we've been working on and talking to various companies about, as well as thinking about what it would take for us to build such an infrastructure. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.